Alright everyone, JP the Third for VenusNow.com, back with more Suzerain. A lot of work done in the last few sessions. We have not cleared our master inbox at all. I'm not even going to pretend that we have, but we are hurtling towards the major midpoint event, which is seeing if we can get the constitutional changes through Parliament. So, don't know if we're going to get to that in this session or not, but we do have some exciting things for the economy. First things first, the reports. Van Horten, general elections held in Agnolia this week has resulted in the victory of the newest Democratic Union of Agnolia for the second time, with its leader, Martin Van Horten, continuing his duties as Prime Minister. Congratulations. Wish we could send like a congratulatory note to our allies and just like, hey man, good job. Let's check the news. Lack of Times, health requires more resources. The latest report coming out of the Ministry of Health regarding the current situation and the need for privatization raises serious questions about the gargantuan scale of effort required to solve the structural issues of health in Sordland. One part of the report about the threat of a potential epidemic being real stands out as it highlights the problem of the current voluntary vaccination policy. I swear this game is not seeing the future. I swear. Minister Benwell has increased his call for more financial resources to be able to make more changes to... Yeah, that's just a straight up misspelling, guys. Come on! To welfare within one term to cover existential issues. Yeah, I got that right. Like epidemic prevention. The report on the potential effects of privatization also include the downsides of what damage private interests could do inside the system of healthcare. However, the ministry pointed out that a small-scale implementation, the one it proposes, will be able to deliver efficient results. We are definitely privatizing a part of healthcare. That's part of our longer-term goal, and it helps bring money into the government and keep the economy going strong as well. Empowerment and uniform for the radical. No political leader in Sordland can survive in office without some support from the general staff. President Archer Vissi was a leader who learned this lesson the hard way in 1927. A military coup brought an end to his short time as president, and later President Alfonso became a target of alleged conspiracies by the Old Guard, who were known to be very close to the general staff of the Swedish Armed Forces. Though nowadays fewer officers assume the roles of political leaders, military influence continues to have major repercussions in politics across eastern Maricopa. According to a report by the Alliance of Nations, Sordland has one of the most influential militaries in the region, coming just behind Zeeland, where the actions of the generals indicate serious military interference in politics. As the report shows, men in uniform still enjoy considerable influence over politics in Sordland, and nothing is being done to reverse the situation despite the country's history of coups and civil war. For once, they're not flowery, and they make a valid point. The most we can do right now is put as much influence as we can behind the defense minister, who is our friend Joseph. Yeah, Joseph. I tripped on his last name there. I'm sorry, it's been a long day. Joseph Lancer. If we can do that, then that puts power over the department and the military in cabinet instead of with the general staff. But we're going to have to stand behind them in the next few turns. That's the only way. So it's, of course, the Alliance of Nations, this game's version of the UN. Alright, that's all the news and the reports. Let's turn now to more reports. Privatization plan proposed. The Ministry of Health has finished a privatization proposal in order to increase the resources of the health system and to increase the quality of services through small-scale market competition. Additionally, the ministry's report highlighted the weaknesses Sordland has when it comes to a potential epidemic. Minister Benwell reported that much more could be achieved through the healthcare system if the private sector could slightly assist by generating new revenue streams and adding new services. I agree. So put it on my desk. Ministry of Justice files Urson versus Sordland concurrence. The Ministry of Justice has reviewed the Urson v. Sordland case and put forward its concurrence opinion before sending the dispute to the Supreme Court. The Vice Minister of Justice came forward agreeing with the case of Ishval Urson, and pointed out that a majority court dissent would do a disservice to the legal precedent of future constitutional rights cases. The case is now in the hands of the Supreme Court. I'm assuming we had a story about that earlier. I would have remembered reading that, though. Maybe this is one of the people that was hurt in that mining accident. Wait. Geralt of Riveri? The winemaker. I don't know. Party leaders, cabinet leaders. Oh, he's a communist. That's not him. I don't know. Okay, so I don't know who he is, and I'm assuming it's not that big of a deal. But maybe it's just my curiosity speaking for me. Yeah, I'll have to look that up later. Maybe it'll probably something else will come to my desk at some point. General Staff gathers. The General Staff is convened at the Ministry of Defense today to assess the security conditions of Sordland. More than 20 high-ranking officers were in attendance and discuss several war plans, the internal stability of the nation, and the overall state of the armed forces. As long as that's all they're doing and not plotting a coup, I think I can live with that. Speaking of Joseph Lancia, I arrived at the cubic building that housed most of the military command that resided in Holsord. That gray and brutalist structure looked daunting. I never liked the building. It always made me feel like I was standing under a concrete foot of a giant getting ready to crush me. It made me feel small, and I never quite got used to the feeling even after this many years. At the entrance, I was greeted by Joseph and his military entourage of young officers. Welcome to the Ministry of Defense, Mr. President. Let's go to my office. We walked from corridor to corridor to reach the office. On the way, we were met with high-ranking officers as well as privates. Every time one of these soldiers saw me, they stopped and saluted me. When we finally arrived at Joseph's office, his entourage saluted us and left. He closed the door and took a seat. This must be something serious, especially since you invited me here. It is important that you don't get misinformed on the matter. Vulcan has another agenda. He leaned back and interlocked his hands. The situation with Rumberg is getting worse, and our lack of funding in the military means we will fight for survival in a war scenario. What are our options in improving the situation? We're making all the necessary preparations, but any substantial military support from other nations would be a welcome deterrent against Rumberg. See, this is what I mentioned, I think, in the last session. He's not stupid. He knows, he understands the military and foreign affairs situation better than most. He's up against a general staff that doesn't always respect him. So, whatever support we can throw, especially right now, is pivotal. I mean, the military partnership we have signed with Agnolia includes a mutual defense clause. In case of conflict, we will be obliged to come to each other's aid. In case of a Rumberg invasion, they will come for help. Do you think their support will be enough to hold the line? I don't think so. Mr. President, we need stronger allies. Sure, Agnolia is better than nothing, but we must look further. Lesbia or Volksland is our option, in my opinion. Do you really think that it is absolutely necessary? Yes, it is. The danger far outweighs the sacrifice. Joseph cleared his throat. Let's move on to our main topic. Mandatory conscription law has become a matter of discussion, and we need to strike a decision whether to keep it or remove it. The facts are that the conscription, I may have popped the microphone on that one. The facts are that the conscription gives us a large reservist pool that can cover a larger front line, but these troops lack the morale and quality to be offensive elements. My argument will be to remove conscription if our military can stand on its own 2 feet without them. If we are going to have strong allies, why do we need conscripts? Lestrade knocked on the door with her, and the chief of the armed forces, Vulcan Kruger, walked in quickly with a frown. What is the meaning of this? Joseph! Why haven't I been invited? What is going on here? You are overstepping and interrupting a personal meeting between me and the president. Vulcan deliberated the situation. I see what is going on here. I mean no disrespect, but I am leading the ground operations and I must be informed of any strategic changes. And we gotta strike a balance here because we want to back Joseph, but we cannot piss off the general staff at all. Because again, we don't want them plotting a coup. Well, now that you are here, what is your opinion on conscription? The matter is rather simple from my point of view. Our forces have gone large. Our forces have gone large structural changes, changing the operational capabilities and tactics. However, at the end of the day, Runeberg has a larger army, air force, and navy. Our conscripts will fill the much-needed weakness we have. We don't share the same opinion. This is a modern age and requires a modern army. And that settles it then. I would ask you to consider. Remove mandatory conscription. It's time to have a professional force of willingly enlisted soldiers. Alright, and we can move on. Let me look over my documents to see if there's anything else of concern. Joseph checked his folder before looking at me. That's about it. I want to take more of your time, sir. Thank you for your time. I left the Ministry of Defense and returned to the Maroon Palace. I'm sure there won't be the boost to the mill. Look at that. We went up 2 points. We don't have a lot of reservists. However, by releasing them from military conscription, they've gone straight into the economy. So that helps. Our economy is about to explode. I'm very excited. Women's Rights March in Enrica. A group of demonstrators led by in Curtin Left's backyard, of course. Representatives from the Sordland League of Women marched in Enrica, calling for gender equality in Sordland's public education system. Women were also among the counter-protesters who argued for the right to keep educating girls separately from boys in order to preserve Sordland's tradition. Well, as long as everybody's getting their voice in. Arcadia has finished moving its planes to the Earlery Armed Force Base. As per the terms of the new agreement, the Arcadian military is allowed refuel and repair access to the Air Force Base in exchange for providing logistical, financial, and equipment support to Sordland, which isn't going to hurt the market either. Before we jump to the opening of the L1, check the news. Boys to men, not without conscription. A little pushback from the Whole Sword Post, excuse me. Sounding death knell for one of Sordland's proudest traditions, President Anton Rayne has just removed the country's mandatory conscription requirement. We can therefore prepare not only for a smaller army and increased defense capabilities, but also for future generations of young men who have no idea how to hold a gun or follow marching orders. That's not the worst thing in the world. This newspaper's male staffers remember their time in the army as one of their most cherished formative experiences. It remains to be seen how Sordland boys will develop a sense of national identity and self-determination without it. By working. Look at our economy. We're still not completely there. Go get a job. Of course, the exact opposite view from the radical. One of Sordland's most backwards traditions has finally been reversed. As of now, young men are freed from their requirement to join the Sordland Army upon coming of age. High school boys are rejoicing in their newfound ability to enter university or the career of their choice upon graduating, while military analysts point out that President Rayne's reversal of mandatory conscription will lead to a smaller but more professional army. We're just happy that those many young students who don't align with the government's aim will now no longer be forced to fight for them. And also a note on the Women's March. In the conservative stronghold of Enrica, protesters organized by the Sordland League of Women bravely call for gender parity in the classroom. Like us, these women hope that President Rayne will use his time in office to fix Sordland's notoriously sexist public education system, they ain't lying, and give young girls the university preparation they sorely need, as opposed to housewife training. A small group of counter-protesters were also present, but drowned out by the cries for equality. And yet again, another reason why I want this to become at least a mini-series. Give me that scene. That'll be fun. We arrived in Hosor for the grand opening of the L1 high-speed rail. It was a proud moment for all of us. Simon and Gus, who heavily assisted the project, were with me along with Lucian to decide how to proceed tomorrow. Lucian stood up. First of all, congratulations everyone. To many more projects like this. Well done everyone. We couldn't have done this without our excellent team. Indeed. Let's move on to our plans for the opening tomorrow. It's been a long time since the last successful infrastructure project. There's a good reason to capitalize on the occasion. I have a plan on how to do that. If Mr. President accepts, driving the first high-speed train to Lockerbie would be great for our image nationwide. What are your thoughts? I don't support anything beyond the opening ceremony. Actions speak for themselves anyway. I like Simon. I see your point, but involving the president further could be beneficial for the administration. I think so too, Mr. President. I agree. There is much to gain, like re-election. Very well. And it might influence some conservatives if they see me at the head of a successful project to keep backing me. Sounds fantastic. The president arriving in Lockerbie on the driver's seat would make the headlines for sure. Additionally, a large crowd is invited for the ceremony and will be watching the opening speech. Like the good old campaigning days, things were certainly easier back then. Simon stepped in for a comment. On another note, it goes without mentioning that this was a team effort. Beginning with the president who put his trust in me, I want to thank all who were involved in L1. Simon, you deserve a lot of credit. After all, it was you who came up with the project. We had our disagreements, but the important thing was the outcome. Sordland people got what they needed for a long time. We will show our best face tomorrow. Meanwhile, I'll make sure that our message of improving the countryside will get across. Alright then, we have a lot of work to do tomorrow. See you in the morning. See you at the ceremony. The team left, leaving the rest of the evening to prepare for the big day tomorrow. Next day, a stage had been erected inside the central station along the new electrified railway line. The sunny weather created a positive mood in a usually gray whole sword. The crowd looked quite large. I spotted many party members among them. Thank you. We began moving towards the stage as the excitement was growing. We were all ready to begin the ceremony. I gave the green light and the opening address began. Brothers and sisters of Sordland, I welcome you whole Swordians today as a proud servant of this country. Lucian's voice echoed in the central station. Thousands of Sordland and USP flags began to wave as the loud cheers intensified. Without further ado, I invite the President of Sordland to the stage. Move up to the stage. Move up to the stage to address the crowd. The press was taking dozens of pictures. My fellow Hosorians, I welcome you today to our opening ceremony of the L1 high-speed railway. The chanting from the crowd continued, someone yelling the motto of whole sword, high above all. Trust me, our work is far from over. This project is only the beginning of good tidings. The aim with the L1 railway was to improve development in rural areas, in cities in between Holsword and Lockerbie, to create economic growth in the greater Holsword and Gulfland regions. This railway brings thousands of new jobs. Many unemployed citizens have benefited and will benefit on the path of the railway. We have to thank the mind behind the rail project for it all. The esteemed Minister of Economy and Tax, Simon Hall. Please come here. Simon walked up beside me. Thanks, Mr. President. I know he hates this kind of stuff, but yeah, this was his idea. He really pushed for it, him and Gus. So he gets let the nerd have its shine. That's what I say. Our aim with this project is obvious: to improve the speed and efficiency of transportation. I'm sure each one of you will be proud of the achievement made during the project once we cut that ribbon. And you can get on that train yourselves. Simon mentioned the beginning of a Swordish economic recovery and the plans to stop the recession altogether. Lucian took Simon's place after he was done with his speech. Citizens of Holsword, there you have it. As promised, Anton Rayne, the 4th President of Sordland, has delivered. We moved towards the line where the first electric train was waiting. A red ribbon was hanging by the door of the train. Simon gave me a large pair of scissors to commence the opening while the crowd was watching me. Snip. I cut the ribbon, which led to a huge wave of cheering from the crowd. Many flashes went off at the same time. Congratulations to all. It was a solid and fruitful effort. Hopefully with much more to come. It was a good moment indeed. We have helped so many in the countryside. The train is prepared and ready. The journey to Lockerbie should take about 4 hours, and the rest of us will be in the carriage with you. Enter tram. I entered the cab and took a seat with the assistant beside me. The crowd was trying to catch a glimpse of me sitting as the driver of the train. Who do you want to travel with in the cab, Mr. President? Well, we gave Simon, all Simon cared about was the opening ceremony. We gave him his shine. Gus, get up here. I like Gus with me. I'm honored. It would be great to arrive in Lockhaven with the President of Sordland. As we began driving the train out of the central station, the media took photos of me and Gus, who gave a thumbs up to the camera. The new train was in pristine condition, and the electric engine made much faster acceleration possible while providing minimal noise and maximum comfort. After the relaxing 4-hour drive to Lockhaven, we were welcomed by celebratory citizens at Lockhaven Station. The railway officially opened to the public as soon as we arrived, and thousands began utilizing it. Today was a great victory for the administration. Let's go. President Rayne opens L1 Railway from the host supports. With a grand ceremony, President Rayne has declared the L1 Railway open with his aides by his side and executives from Underhall Construction. After the ribbon cutting, he delivered a heartfelt speech and brought attention to the capabilities of the administration. Following his speech, President Rayne drove a train on the new railway for the first time. The L1 Railway is expected to boost the production in between the largest cities in Sordland and has been happily welcomed by the citizens. Another victory for Underhall. Underhall Construction once again proves their worth with the opening of the L1 Railway. This government-contracted mega project aims to bring much-needed logistics improvement. I can't talk because I need a spell checker every single second of the day, but yeah. Between the two highest output cities in Sordland, Lockhaven and Holsford. On the opening day, President Rayne personally drove a train for the first time, for the first time ever, after a speech highlighting the opportunities this new logistics overhaul will bring. A victory for our team. I will take it. And it still just only puts us up to average. We're getting there. We're gonna have an economic briefing now. Let's go ahead and get into it. Team gathered in Holsford at the Ministry of Economy to conduct an economic overview meeting to go over the current situation. I actually managed to mute my phone in time. Perfect. The building was constructed in 1892 by Baron Walt, one of the, if not most, famous architects in Sordland. The building looked simple and elegant with a few of his signature domes spread out over the roof. Walking through the large bronze doors at the entrance, I was led by two assistants upstairs into a meeting room. Everyone stood as I entered the room, buttoning their suit jackets. Welcome, Mr. President. Please, take your seats. Everyone took their seats. As you all know, today we will go over our economic status. Let's begin without further ado. The aid we have received from Arcadia has helped us tremendously. Personally, I think it was a great decision, Mr. President. We will use a majority of the capital to combat the recession. I would expect nothing less from our Arcadian friends. Well said. How are we doing in terms of the infrastructure? The success of the first infrastructure project is already showing a positive effect on the economy. Mikhail started grinning as he leaned forward. Thanks to the high-speed railway, our two most important cities are linked faster. We are expecting quick economic growth in Greater Holston and Gelfland. The Business Council is satisfied with this infrastructure improvement. It was a gargantuan effort from outside in the Ministry of Economy. Positive results show that we are on the right path towards economic growth. The people are already speaking of the positive turn. I see the reactions in society. David, do you have the stats of our deal with Agnolia? Our trade deal with Agnolia has increased our imports and exports by 25% in 1 month, with much more to be expected in the future. But higher prices of Agnolian steel didn't result in a trade surplus. We should look for more trade partners. We can make much more and increase our presence in the region. I agree. Not just the region. We should target for more deals internationally. We should see our improved relations with Agnolia as a stepping stone to expand positive influence. And support our foreign initiatives with partners as democratic as Agnolia. It just seems like you could be a particularly unsettled jerk to the women. Like, good lord. All right. It is good for overall trade with other countries as well. Democratic countries generate more trust in general. On a side note, consumer spending has increased due to the optimistic mood caused by the successes in our economic gains. Excellent news. We need to keep working hard. I'm confident we can do much more than what we have accomplished thus far. We are close to getting high economic growth rates. We should be willing to cooperate on new projects. Simon checked his large dossier. Sadly, our budget reserves don't look good. We need to look into whatever we can to increase the budget we have. What can we do about it? I will formulate a plan and present you the next steps. As per the latest data, unfortunately, the recession seems to be lingering. No matter the cost, we will have to increase our economic development rates. Otherwise, I'm sad to say we will be doomed. We need to use the opportunities we are shown. Trade deals and infrastructure improvements always help. Mr. President, I will be very clear. Simon took off his glasses and put them on the table. He looked me straight in the eye. You already know this, and I don't want to frighten you, but if we are unable to stop this recession, we are heading towards an economic catastrophe that has never been seen before in Sordland. No, in all of Eastern Maricopa. I can't even begin to imagine how we would survive that. None of us want to see Sordish people starve while the state is unable to provide for its citizens. Don't worry, we will end the recession. I promise. I hope you're right. He put on his glasses. Now, there are a few methods to tackle the recession. We have the potential to take additional debt to flatten the downward turn of the economy. The important factor is that we don't take excessive debt going into the future. I have prepared a few project proposals. There are two main distinctions in between these projects. It's either about continuing our infrastructure improvements or investing in increased production. If we continue on our infrastructure, that would lift us up to advanced country levels. However, our industrial production suffered and also needs a boost to return to pre-recession levels. There is, of course, the option to not take any risk related to our budget. The plans for these projects will be finalized soon. For now, I can provide preliminary information. Which one would you like to hear first? What are the projects that can improve our infrastructure? For infrastructure, we have two projects. One is the Benfey International Airport, and the other is the Morna Port. Benfey is growing at a rapid pace and would benefit highly from an international airport. Much more money to be made there, too. The Morna Port will boost trade and improve the flow of goods towards Holthorpe because the Conrad Port is too small in capacity and extension is blocked by the Navy headquarters. Morna would be a more significant city with a port, and the advanced logistical connections to Holthorpe would be better utilized. I don't think investing in Morna with a port would do much to change our economic prospects. Goods are flowing from other places just as fast. Increased imports and exports are on a more accessible path to Holthorpe is very lucrative in my opinion. Time is money. I agree with Edith. The Morna port will mean a great deal to our trade and improve the economy of the Lorne region too. What are the projects that could boost our production? For production, we have two projects. One is the Sordland Agricultural Zone, and the other is the Conrad Industrial City. I see the Sordland Agricultural Zone investment as a higher priority due to the fact that farmers in Berger were the most hit by the recession. Sordland is also a much poorer city than Conrad. The Conrad Industrial City project has the potential to increase manufacturing in the greater Holthorpe region by a large amount. Sordland is a much poorer city indeed. It deserves any investment it can get from the government. The recession has hit the farmers of Sordland particularly hard. Besides, the agricultural output increase would boost the economy. The investment won't be able to recover the industry there. Conrad, on the other hand, will bring more financial gain. Our government has the opportunity to support agriculture, and we should take it. It would increase our exports too, and that's key. Like we can build up our infrastructure as much as we want, but if we don't produce more to send out, and we're just bringing materials in, then we're far too imbalanced and we can't profit off of it. I have enough information. Very well. That covers our subjects for today. Anybody who wants to add something? Nobody answered. That concludes the meeting. Have a good day, all. Goodbye. Until next time, Mr. President. See you soon. I really didn't have too many questions there. That covered the bulk of everything I wanted. Now, polio case. Oh, here we go. Reports from our border cities indicate that the polio outbreak in Valen has been moving towards Sordland. Specifically, there has been a sharp increase in cases in rural Suzerain and nearby villages. Health professionals have been dispatched to curb the infections by quarantining the patients. Wow. There are currently 23 active cases in Sordland. Prime Minister Van Horten warned us about the increasing naval presence of Sordland in the Marquis Sea. He showed his wishes to have a stronger naval cooperation with Sordland in the future. We can definitely arrange that. Check the news. Housewives march to defend Swordist traditions. As the Swordist League of Women spearheaded a march for so-called education equality in Eureka, a group of self-proclaimed happy housewives led a counter-protest. The argument is that pulling girls out of handicraft classes and forcing them into science classes alongside boys would be an affront to Swordist tradition, and that co-ed restrooms in schools would be the next logical step, or the logical next step. We had the host reports hope President Rayne will make the same decision and not fall into the trap of pursuing unnecessary changes in the classroom. So, like the wholesale porcelain today, those are pretty hard right. Lockeman Times is closer to the center. Them and the Economist. Geopolitical is more of an international publication. And The Radical is The Radical, for those curious about the political leanings of the news. Operation Bear Trap begins. Excuse me. President of Sordland has declared the start of Operation Bear Trap against the separatist militant group that plagues northern Valen, the British Freedom Front. Rumberg, Agnoli, and Lesbia have condemned the mobilization order, citing the war crimes committed during the previous assault against the British people, while Sordland has not made any comment on the matter. We don't like it either. Just want to put that out there. Watchtower of Human Rights said that they will be following the developments closely for any infractions or human rights violations. Men spiking tensions with Agnolia. Oh, Lord. The report from Eastern Maricopa shows 2 Voxlanian aircraft carriers are patrolling the Marquis Sea around the Helgeland Island. A massive shell naval force amid spiking tensions with Agnolia. Starport can interpret this as a provocation in the region, says experts of the region. The sudden and simultaneous appearance of 2 carriers accompanied by Navy cruisers, destroyers, and aircraft comes as Voxland escalates criticism of Agnolia's increasing control over Helgeland and its increasing forays around the island. The new diplomatic initiative presented by the Foreign Ministry has led to a major disappointment when President Rayne went to Vaclavis, only to come back empty-handed. The meeting with President Smollett seems to have gone negatively, diminishing the chance for closer ties between the 2 countries. At the time when Sordland needs more regional ties, this comes as grave news. From the outside looking in, I can understand that reaction. I can. But in the wake of Operation Bear Trap, I am not sorry at all. I'm perfectly fine. I am perfectly fine with not helping that monster commit his atrocities. Perfectly fine for that. Okay. Let's see. Economic privatization update. The Ministry of Education has reported that the privatization effort for education has been going well and that they are on track to meet targets. The capital received from... Really, though. Capital received from the privatization of schools and competing private investors has already shown results in the form of new schools and improved quality of education in most major cities. Once again, the free market, solving all of our problems. I'm sorry, I'm just checking what calls it knows on my phone. I keep thinking it's muted, and yet. So we have some new mega projects on the desk that will legitimately sink our budget in ways that I don't know if I'm prepared to do. Maybe I should have taken a deal with Valen after all. Jesus. Okay, so here's what I'm thinking. So far, we have invested in a lot of regions. We've got to do something about our output. We've got to do something. I'm just I'm mad that it's come to this. I can just as easily do nothing, but so in the last Centrist kind of playthrough I did, with Agnolia, they've mostly invested in ag land. That takes care of that. We've invested in Lorne, as well as this pass here from the south of Nargis into Wholesword. I want to throw Bergia a bone. I believe that we have enough here to throw Bergia a bone, and it will help us with some plans I have later for improving minority rights, because Bergia is a majority minority area, and more importantly, it boosts our output. That should help us more economically. I'm going to be -4 in the budget, though. These are the sacrifices that must be made. Hopefully that will see budget allocation of healthcare. Let's go ahead and meet. Hopefully that will see some results very quickly. I've got to turn the budget around very quickly. I was having my afternoon tea in my office and going through newspapers. One of the headlines piqued my interest. It read polio crisis in Valen. Before I could start reading, I heard a couple of nods. Pascal entered, followed by Lucian. Mr. President, it is time for the scheduled healthcare meeting. Good afternoon. Please take your seats. And taking their seats, Pascal produced documents from his suitcase. He put them on the table. Pascal looked at the newspaper I was reading. Very troubling news from Valen, Mr. President. I have just returned from a meeting with our top scientists on the matter of polio. It seems to be spreading. What are we doing to prepare? We have notified all of our healthcare staff, especially the ones closest to the Valen border. Unfortunately, these are also the more rural areas where we lack equipment and staff. What I was told by our researchers was that with the current infection rate, there will soon be millions of people affected by polio. Again, I swear to you, this just released. I swear, like, not just released, but it wasn't like all done during the COVID-19 pandemic. I swear to you, I promise you. We need to be ready for any possibility. I doubt it is that serious yet. Regardless, back to the topic, Mr. Benewall. Pascal put on his reading glasses and went through the documents. He didn't say anything for a whole minute. Mr. Benewall? Yes, of course, let's start. He put the papers down, cleared his throat, and looked at me. In general, I am very content with the budget decision that was made. This comes as a very pleasant surprise that we all welcomed at the ministry. The overall mood has been positive as the administration focused more on healthcare. Hi, I'm excited about what we can achieve with the allocated funds. Providing better health care is our goal. This administration will be known to have supported the welfare services. I'm personally invested to solve the horrible infant and maternal death rates along with your request. As you know, I've been preparing a new privatization program that will create funds through selling of unused ministry property and some extra taxes. It might not go against our strategy to promote a market economy, but I'm personally against privatization of government services. Such vital services must be under state control. Aside from creating additional funds, there is a long-term problem with privatization in a country like Sordland. What are those problems? People are already lacking proper health care even though it is free. What happens when you privatize? Prices increase as state hospitals close due to sales. We will prevent the worst case scenarios. There needs to be healthy structural improvements in this sector. This is not Acadia or Lesbia. You're talking about Sordland, in which the healthcare is free for now. We have people who have their lives depending on a service that is free to them. Messing with that structure will definitely hurt us politically in the future. That I know for sure. Considering how center to center right he has been, somebody he knows is relying on those services. I'm just going to say that. We don't know near enough about Lucian to have a call one way or the other, but still. But the choice is yours, Mr. President. We will promote privatization and allow the private sector to invest and buy government health properties. Excellent. We can turn that extra money to something useful. I shall let my partners know. I don't think this was the right choice. Now, let's get to the big question of how we will spend extra funds dedicated to the Ministry of Health. What are your suggestions? We have three options to use the majority of our funds on. We can build new hospitals where needed. We can spend money on increasing salaries for health workers, or we can spend money to improve existing treatment in rural areas. Improving treatment in rural areas is a must. It would prevent mistreatment improving treatment in rural areas is a must. It would prevent mistreatment, disease, and sickness. Our rural clinics are old, ill-equipped, and understaffed, which causes a huge urban and rural disparity. It is one of the causes of maternal deaths and other sicknesses which I want to solve within this term. Reports have shown that minor epidemics are spreading in certain areas due to old facilities with a lack of hygiene and equipment. I believe improving treatment in rural areas should be our focus, Mr. President. It would be best to consider the political advantages of each one, as well as the practical advantages before making a decision. A few minutes went by in contemplation as the moment to make a decision came near. Improve rural treatment by hiring health staff and upgrading equipment in rural areas. New contracts for improvements will be drawn up immediately. We can initiate one more spending policy with our funds. Which would you like? I'm tempted to just... I didn't know we gave them that much money. Like, it didn't feel like we gave them that much money, but apparently we did. Let me think about this one, because overall, it shouldn't be too much of a crazy difference, I don't think. We will build, let's just build new hospitals. We'll build new hospitals where they are needed. Access to health will be available for all. We should begin plans of hospital constructions immediately. That'll be all then. Very well. Fruitful meeting nevertheless, nice and short. Thank you for the meeting. Pascal gathered his documents and left alone with Lucian. As nice as it would be to toss our doctors a bonus, and we will, hopefully, eventually. Right now, we need to improve, quality rural healthcare services. Wow. Due to lack of funds, the House implemented measures of the Ministry of Education has failed and disrupted the system. Well, we got that going for us. Check the news. Real threat to public health care. Oh, well, there's Ishaval Earthen. Reports coming in that the Rayne administration has decided on privatizing the Sordland health system. If that happens, it would be one of the biggest mistakes of Rayne's presidency. Thousands of Sordland rural citizens already lack access to affordable health care, with clinics and hospitals in the hands of greedy corporations. This gap would enlarge further. We must first reform the system we have rather than promise better care to the rich. The drastic privatization efforts, while systemic issues exist in the system, would only allow the poor to suffer more under the capitalist interest. I think they'll be all right. The troubling and justified case of Isheval Urson is making its way from the lower courts of the Ministry of Justice and by order of the Supreme Court. Thereafter, the systemic racism felt around the country seems to know no limits, especially when it comes to the largest minority of our nation. The truth is that the situation is very bleak and the British people demand their long-awaited rights. The Constitution protects the individual rights on paper, but those who uphold and enforce the law pay little attention to such legalities. It gets even worse when justified legal cases like these are made and appealed to the Supreme Court. The general outcome is always depressingly unjust. Unfortunately, nobody expects otherwise in this case either. Government's iron grip on healthcare ends. The administration has decided privatization will be allowed in the health system. We're seeing what state-run healthcare has to offer. Long wait times, outdated equipment, doctors who care more about stamping their time card than serving patients. Analysts that the economists have run the numbers. We've got nothing to lose by allowing reasonable privatization, by allowing the companies to take the reins, and everything to gain. More competition, better service, and greater incentive for medical innovation. The state can't fill all the gaps of the system, and therefore the market should aid in these efforts. President Rayne was walking on the path of reason on this matter. Thank you. I will always take positive reviews from The Economist. Thousands protested the new governor of Helgeland. Thousands in Helgeport took to the streets to protest the Agnolian government's increased control over Helgeland's administration following the appointment of a new governor. Demonstrators protested the Agnolian government's decision to appoint a governor from the Agnolian mainland without holding any local elections on the island. Yeah, that's kind of dirty. Sordlandian leader Chancellor Hegel, this guy, was quick to condemn the decision. The majority of the residents of the island still claim Volge heritage or have Sordlandian ancestry. Experts say that the increasing tension between Agnolian and Volsland prompted the Agnolian authorities to make the decision with an aim to increase their control over the island. It's very important strategically, but I wish we could do more to increase the peace in this situation. Chief of the Armed Forces Volkan Kruger reported that the Vesik Armed Forces are moving north towards the town of Vernon, on their way many British villages were assaulted, and initial reports indicate a high death toll. As they are approaching closer to the border, Vesik's army's movement will be observed closely. Many displaced refugees from the battles have been seen moving towards the Swedish border. Also, our investment in bird drill will help absorb some of the costs of those immigrants. Oh, we finally got a report on the case. A landmark court finding has been appealed to the Court of Appeals today and is under review by the Minister of Justice. The lawyer and British civil rights activist Isheval Urson sued the Dire municipality, led by Felix Braun, for the infringement of constitutional rights of equality before the law. The case questions the separate legal treatment of the Brutish and Dire. Okay, that gives us a better idea. Okay, so he's a populist, but he's terrible. He's awful at his job. Moving right along. Trying to shore up some support for this vote, since we probably won't have many conservatives on board. Again, if I did the math right, and we have, take a quick look here. Let's go over the political overview in the legislature. So, we'll have the 70 seats. We'll have Clavin's faction and the Independents. So of the 160, we are starting, if at least half of the party is made up of reformers and moderates, we are starting with 65 votes on our end from our party, and the PFJP is bringing 70 and the Independents are bringing 10. So that gives us 145 of 166. We don't need that many more left. We just got to make sure that the conservatives are not too ticked off heading into the vote. And we should be able to peel enough away. It's going to be a squeaker. I'm not going to pretend like anything different is going to happen here. But if we slide through it with 167 votes or something like that, I would be very pleased. The preparations for the new constitution were nearly complete. Soon we were going to propose it to the Grand National Assembly, a huge step for our administration. But we desperately needed more support. That's why I had invited Frens Ricter for a chat about the upcoming vote. He and his party held the key to our success. We met in the presidential office at the end of the day. He arrived in his signature navy blue suit and handed me a box of famous occasion chocolates before settling down on the couch. Thank you for the gift. Oh, it's nothing, Mr. Rayne. He took a photo from his briefcase and flipped it open. I could see the scribbles he made in the margins of my draft proposal. I have to say, I'm surprised by this proposal you prepared for the new Constitution. I really do not understand your reasoning behind some of the changes. What's on your mind? Don't get me wrong, I like your draft, as I've already stated. I'm just shocked you listened to our demands, decreasing the electoral threshold and the term limits. That's more than we hoped for. How does the USP feel about that, Mr. President? Is this political suicide, or did you actually manage to get the party behind your changes? The USP is an agreement. It is up to you to support it now. Mrs. Tory didn't seem to be extremely enthusiastic about the new Constitution. Are you sure you have all the votes you need? I believe the Chief Justice has her ear, and the Old Guard is doing their best to make sure you fail. Are you aware the Old Guard has been reaching out even to PFJP members? I hope you're doing something to contain this mess. Who would have thought? Of course they are, but we shouldn't worry. So you have a plan. But even if the changes pass the Assembly, how are you going to get such an anti-Solace proposal past the Supreme Court? We have a few connections on the inside. I'm going to handle that. Oh? Is Mrs. Edmonds one of them? Not yet, but we're working on it. You can't afford to fail this. I hope you will succeed, Mr. Rayne. I respect what you're doing inside the USP. I'll do my best to flip the Supreme Court as well. You can count on the PFJP votes. I just want your promise that you will give us proper credit and finally do something about the unbalanced representation of our party on state television. For decades, your party has been doing whatever it could to stay in power while keeping PFJP silenced. If we were to be on the same side, I expect you to finally acknowledge all the wrongs that have been done and act against the solid state apparatus in full force. Of course, we're in this together. That's great to hear. I hope I can rely on you. In the upcoming vote, we expect USP to rally behind your proposal. I can assure you, you'll have the PFJP's full support. I'm happy to cooperate with you, Mr. Ricter. Likewise, Mr. Rayne. Was there anything else? Before you leave, I'd like to address a few things I heard about you. There are so many things said about me that I can't keep track of them anymore. What exactly do you mean? I received intelligence that you made a deal with Arcasia, and that you tried covering your tracks. What do you have to say about that? Oh, it did come to that after all. Well, I will enlighten you about my relationship with Arcasia. As you know, the downfall of President Alfonso was abrupt. It was the only progressive hope we had at the USP. Our brief alliance with him accomplished great things, but we ran into a very concerning revelation. In our last meeting before the USP abandoned him, President Alfonso said Saul was not gone and still pulled the strings behind his back. He was suspicious about a conspiracy against his reformist agenda, and he feared everything would collapse around him. And it did. After the party voted you in. I don't think it was a coincidence, Mr. Rayne. You think Saul and the Old Guard orchestrated all of this? Yes. They knew that Alfonso's reforms would cripple their strength and remove them from power, so they removed them first. After realizing the true extent of the solid deep state's influence, He looked down for a second and continued. We are in this together, so I will be honest. I lost hope that Sordland could ever achieve the liberties and democracy that I've been working so hard for as long as Solism was still alive and well. So I decided to act. Act how? I was contacted by an Arcasian senator and one of Arcasia's biggest tycoons, and I decided to agree to their meeting in hopes of receiving support. I kept listening. I flew to Arcadia and I eventually met with President Walker. He offered political and economic support for me and my party, asking us to lead Sordland into the democratic sphere and become a member of the ATO. But the exploitative conditions he was demanding would have had crippling effects on our economy. I told him I was only there to increase economic cooperation and nothing else. I did not get their support, nor did I do anything illegal. To this day, I feel ashamed of going to the feet of Arcasia like that. But at least I managed to stop myself from becoming the very thing I've been fighting against. I'm grateful that you're telling me all this. Thanks for taking it so well. We must always be honest with one another. You have the authority to investigate this and potentially prosecute me for it. I gave you my trust. I hope I have yours too. I'll always acknowledge my wrongs and keep fighting for a better future. I believe we are not that different in this. You are correct. I hope to be together in this fight for a better future. As the revolutionaries once said, the morning will come, Mr. Rayne. We'll see it one day. Anyway, if you ever want to discuss this topic further, feel free to call me. I don't have anything to hide. He stood up. I'll get going now, if you'll excuse me. Thank you for the meeting. We shook hands. It's nice to have a president that we can finally have a dialogue with. He laughed. I'll see you in the history books. Have a nice evening for now. He left the room. I like the cut of his jib. Do people even still say that? So we've got their votes. Sordland today, Rayne meets Ricter. Sordland today has received an exclusive update about President Rayne's constitutional reform process. According to our insider sources, Rayne met today with PFJP head Frens Ricter in an attempt to secure the party's votes in the assembly. This meeting could be an indication that the president is truly aiming for democratic reform as opposed to paying lip service or using the opportunity to consolidate his own power. We will know more once the results of the meeting are announced. Ricter backs Rayne's reforms. At a priority conference today, the PFJP came out in support of Anton Rayne's constitutional reforms. Leader Frens Ricter announced that the proposal President Rayne has submitted to them met their party standards for democratic reform. It's time our parties stand together in order to make changes to our outdated constitution, said Ricter, calling his party members to give support to the proposal. Despite a complete show of support from the PFJP members, the group's deputy chairwoman, Mrs. Suzerain, protested Richter's call for bipartisanship and blamed the party leadership for handing Sordland to President Rayne on a silver platter. She was seen leaving the meeting during Richter's speech in protest. It is unclear whether the draft will now go forward before the assembly is Rayne's original one, or if it had been changed with Richter's input. It's also unclear if Mrs. Sahil's protest will gather support within the party against the proposal. What is clear is that with the PFJP's votes, Rayne's chances for successfully passing the reforms in the agenda just got a lot higher. Let's go. At yesterday's party conference of the PFJP, Frens Ricter announced that he will be giving his full support. Very nice. Very, very nice. Award company contract. Come on! Come on, man! I say there, son. Tired of spending money. Jesus. Let me think about this. This is a much smaller project. Maybe I just want to make absolutely sure. Hold on, I'm sorry guys. I'm mad, like I want to make absolutely sure, like I'm looking up a quick note here to make sure I'm not about to rip apart my budget. And I probably should have looked at this before I even started the thing, or at least figured out a way to pause the damn thing. But it's, I'm just mad. It's just, give me a break. I'm trying to spend the money. Un momento, por favor. Alright, let's toss it to Taurus. That way we're keeping our promises. I'm sick of spending money. They should do a decent job, though. It's a much smaller project than the L1. Alright. The education meeting should be our last one. After a meeting with the rector and a brief tour of the University of Sordland, we gathered in a room with CR. The entire The entire campus was visible from the window. Students were reading books, studying, and having picnics under the trees. Reminded me of my own times at Lockton Business School, at least more carefree moments. Reminiscing about the past. How were your university years? The usual story. A few friends dead, a couple of them missing after the coups. Oh, and I was almost arrested once. What for? Protesting against police brutality. Ironic, isn't it? Let's not get sidetracked. I want to start off by saying this. Stagnation doesn't get anyone anywhere. Simply maintaining my ministry's funds got us sitting duck, left us a sitting, I'm assuming that's supposed to be left us, so left us a sitting duck with dozens of issues left unsolvable. The state having had to rely on privatization funds is a disgrace. We're letting private interests meddle in the most essential service, learning. New private schools are increasing the disparity of services in education. Lower-income households who can't afford the private school in their districts and might need to send their children to a public school far away. Although I insist that the funds are still necessary to close the gap in services, I can't say we have been entirely on track. I want to thank you for leading our education system in the right direction. Traditional teachings have long prevented proper progress. You played a huge part in this too, Ciara, because you wouldn't shut up about it. She nodded and brought out a stack of papers from her bag. Spinning her ballpoint pen, she went through the papers, organizing some of them together. Our ministry had prepared the necessary framework regarding how to spend the funds we gained through school privatization. I outlined 3 potential options. We can build new rural schools, improve the standards of existing ones, or increase salary for all education workers. We have the capacity to implement only one of these options. What does improving rural schools entail? Where to start? At the very least, they need new equipment and materials. Many of these schools are facing a shortage of desks and textbooks. The ones that aren't haven't been updated since before the Sordland administration. If teachers lack the resources to give Sordland youth the proper education, it can be as bad as if they don't go to school at all. Tell me about the plan to build new rural schools. The issue is very critical as we are losing many young people to ignorance and illiteracy. Sordland's rural population is full of untapped potential. With enough education, these people could be an asset to our workforce and society. Look at how United Cantana is pushing past Occasion in education and research. It's because most of their rural populace has access to schools. Why should we increase the salaries of education workers? The job itself should be held in higher regard and be compensated accordingly. These are people who have chosen to dedicate themselves to the betterment of others, to help raising the next generation. We ought to give them what they deserve. I'm ready to decide. She put down a pen and looked at me. Build new rural schools. Our primary goal must be to increase access to education. It feels gratifying we are finally serving the people directly. I will pass it down to the ministry. That is all there is for now. I have talked with Ms. Suno to schedule some time to discuss the curriculum. She is a very astute woman, your secretary. You may want to consider promoting her. No comment. We will meet again very soon. Thank you for your efforts. Sarah put the papers back in her bag and left the meeting room. So we're slowly but surely improving the education gap as well. So that's good. A new mega project, Sarna Agriculture Zone. President Rayne has just announced a plan for a brand new agricultural zone in Sarna. As per the announcement, Tarsus Holding has been awarded with the contract, and they will be taking over the daunting task that will be transforming the city and its neighborhood. On completion, this mega project will provide a much-needed production boost not just to Sarna, but to the entire Berger region. Valen refugees fleeing to the Sordland border as President Victor Smollett continues his operations against the Bludish insurgents in this country. A wave of people of Vezek, Sordish, and Bludish have been attempting to flee the conflict and cross the border into Sordland. According to the report from the Alliance of Nations, the situation inside Valen is becoming increasingly complex, with many different groups and factions entering and leaving the country. The AIM report says that international reporters are no longer being allowed inside Valen, and the information from the country has become incredibly difficult to obtain. It also explicitly warns the neighboring countries of an upcoming refugee crisis. It remains to be seen how the Brain administration will deal with the influx. That investment in Berger should help. Vezek blood sees refuge in Sordland. Bloodthirsty dictator Victor Smollett is at it again with the endless operations of against the so-called terrorists as he keeps carpet bombing villages composed of innocent citizens. According to the latest report, the number of Vesic Blitz displaced by the operation is at least 100,000. They have become refugees seeking help from nearby countries. Stuck in between Rumburg, Lesbia, and Sordland, most of them are choosing our country. We must help these innocent people in the name of humanity, or no one else will. President Rayne has done well with not even accepting a trade deal with a rogue country like Valen. We all know the saying, even a broken clock is right two times a day. Well, I guess I'll take it. Why not? We got a little time. Let's do one more. So I scheduled a short meeting at the Ministry of Education to discuss the current curriculum taught in schools. You better not be flirting with my secretary. The ministry building was located... Oh, good. It's not in my office. The ministry building was located in the government district right next to the Ministry of Health. It was tall, narrow, and wedge-shaped, like a slightly open book. Near the front gate, there are many statues of world-renowned scientists and thinkers. The largest, of course, was that of Artvind Einstein, the greatest scientist of all time. Above the main entrance was the familiar inscription, I'm not even going to try and read it again, education is the premise of progress in all societies and all families. Inside the building, I was greeted by Ciara's assistants. They led me to a meeting room where she was waiting aside. She stood and gripped my hand. Good afternoon, Mr. President. Good afternoon, Ciara. I'll cut straight to the chase. The lack of government resources has halted our plans for education reform, but there is one important change that can still be made. It involves evolution versus creationism. As it currently stands, schools across Sordland can decide whether to include evolution, creationism, or both in their curriculum. Rural schools are often decide in favor of creationism only, which puts students at a disadvantage when it comes to entering university. This effect is especially noticeable among young women. My suggestion is to make the teaching of evolution mandatory, and preferably ban creationism altogether. And have half of my party ticked off at me? Woman, are you crazy? I don't see a problem teaching our children both theories. That would be one way to compromise, yes, but does creationism really help open the minds of our children? The way I see it, it promotes the blind acceptance of the world as it is, no facts or verification needed. Children should be encouraged to think critically and ask questions. Creationism and other religious teachings hinder that. What about the so-called evolution theory? What about that, CR? Regardless, I don't believe schools need to ban creationism entirely. I don't see no harm in letting students decide for themselves. Honestly, that's a valid argument. I can live with that. Mr. Gallade knocked and entered. Excuse me, some urgent business kept me away. Welcome, Mr. Gallade. Mr. President. Miss Walda. We were just discussing the curriculum. Cyrus made some excellent points. Very well. Let's hear them. Okay, let's all lean back, get the popcorn. This is going to be interesting. Continuing from my previous point, it is my conviction that we should require the mandatory teaching of evolution in Sordland's public schools and cut creationism completely out. If we want children from rural areas to have the same opportunities as their urban counterparts, this is the way. Opening students' minds and reducing the role of religion in schools will also lead to more equality between young men and women. Don't bring your pet causes into this, Miss Walda. You failed your reforms, and now you want to remove belief from schools? And advancing women's rights is more than just a pet cause. Most of you gentlemen must know that. Also, we all know why the education reform failed, don't we? Ciara looked at me. I am staying out of this! I didn't say anything! Going back to the topic. Although I myself believe in evolution, we must be careful not to alienate our rural conservative voter base. We owe them a lot for their support. Forcing their school districts to teach evolution can irreparably damage our standing with them. Every modern nation is reducing or removing creationism in their curriculum. Yet we are supposed to allow schools to promote fundamental and yet sexist ideals from 1,000 years back? So is that what we are doing now? Copying what other nations are doing instead of paving our own way? If it works, why not? Look at the analysis. It's clear that the superpowers are doing something right. Should we reinvent the real mystical aid? It's because if we don't import any influences from other countries. That's not what I said. Their voices started to get louder and louder. I held up my hand for silence. We can still allow creationism to be taught alongside evolution. Ciara, you can live with that. Yes, although I won't like it. I still believe schools are no place for religion. I won't like it either. You'll have to prepare to lose a lot of votes. Ciara looked me in the eye. It is your decision. Don't forget, future generations of Swordlish youth are counting on you. I will make the teaching of evolution mandatory, but schools may promote creationism alongside it if they wish. Unfortunate, but it will have a better outcome than banning creationism altogether. I disagree. Rejecting creationism would have been a signal that we are redirecting Sordland towards a scientifically and technologically advanced future. They turned and looked at each other. To your corners, both of you. Seriously. Lucian lifted his eyebrow and Ciara held his gaze for a couple of seconds. The meeting ended shortly after. For very obvious reasons. Checking into reports. Accessible rural education. 7 news stories, okay. We're not gonna do all that right now. We'll save. We got a bunch of reports coming in. What's the next big thing? We got some lobbying that we have the option to do, and a bunch of news to read. We will save all of that for the next one. Leave a like if you enjoyed the video. Subscribe to the channel if you have not thus far. And VSNow.com. It is VSNow.com, where hopefully we won't be in a budget deficit much longer. Seriously, gotta improve on that.